how can you manage vision loss? I'm in my 50s. It's something that I'm concerned about. I know a lot of our listeners have reached out to our team about this, specifically through your diet. What's your paradigm or the principles or your approach towards that?
Yeah, such a great question. I'm so glad we're talking about vision, Jim, because that actually was one of my first passions as a scientist and also as a doctor. In fact, I wanted to be, at one point, I thought about becoming an ophthalmologist, an eye doctor, because I was so fascinated by this little ball. We've got two of them in our heads, and they are direct communications to our brain. So everything that we appreciate about the world and frankly about ourselves, we associate with what we can actually see. In fact, vision is one of these senses that is the most precious sense to us, but we don't think about it until we start to lose it, or we have start having problems, right? So if you think about general health as something that many people take for granted until you start to lose it, and that's all you can think about. So too within health, our vision health is like that. It's just something we assume it's part of who we are every single day until you start having problems. Then you're like, wait a minute, what's going on? I can't see as well. So I'm a scientist. I'm what we call a vascular biologist. So I study blood vessels, and blood vessels are connecting every single organ in your body, from your mouth to your brain, to your eyes, to your heart, to your lung, to your livers. And so the idea of food being something, our nutrients being delivered from what we eat through our bloodstream to our eye is absolutely vital for the ongoing health of our vision and to prevent vision loss. And I'll come back to that, talk about how do we do that. But the other thing is I'm a clinician. I'm internal medicine. And what that means is that I take care of men and women, young and old, healthy and sick. And because vision is one of my passions and brain health is something that I'm intensely interested in and have actually been working on from a dementia perspective, from a cognition perspective. Listen, anybody who's sort of our age range probably knows, if not our direct parents, then the parents of our friends, our good friends, who are actually struggling with, the cognitive and functional issues of aging. This is something that my research has actually been directly influencing. And because the eye is connected to the brain, in fact, the eye is the opening to the brain from a visual signal perspective. This is why what protects the eye also protects the brain. This is why the eye, in fact, is a window into some of the problems of the brain. And most doctors don't look in the eye. Only an ophthalmologist really does that. So, and again, I'm internal medicine, so I cover the whole gamut. And I became a foodist medicine researcher because I have a background doing medical therapy development, as you actually mentioned in my intro. I was looking at blood vessels as a common denominator of disease. And by looking at ways to wrangle the common denominator, like what is it that underlies, connects all these different diseases from vision loss to cognitive dysfunction and dementia to obesity to diabetes to cancer to heart disease? Well, it turns out to be blood vessels. And so what I did is I did a deep dive into this space to ask, what medical treatments, biotech treatments can we actually um, wrangle, can maneuver, help produce, squeeze out using innovation? And that became such a successful enterprise. I then started to ask, well, what happens if we start throwing food into the same system? And what I discovered is that when we started throwing food and food extracts into these drug development systems to help keep blood vessels healthy, including vision, I found that about 50% of the foods that we were actually testing were as or more potent than the drugs that we were developing. And so I'm one of the OGs when it comes to food as medicine. And I love to talk about it because while treatments, you write a prescription as a doctor for people, it's the right drug for the right person at the right time, but not everyone can get the treatments they need. Food as medicine is something that we do for ourselves. It's very empowering that we can actually, use knowledge, modern knowledge, to be able to make those daily decisions that can actually help prevent disease. So you don't need the doctor to do that intervention. Or if you're actually having the doctor do the intervention, you can actually do something for yourself in addition to what the prescription actually does. So this all kind of comes all the way down to the fact that our vision is a window to our brain. Our vision is a sense that we prize the most. If you lost your sense of smell, yeah, you're probably okay with it, like you had a cold. You start losing your vision, all of a sudden, like that sets off panic. And so we can eat to preserve our vision. There are foods that are now known to be very important to contain the secret sauce to helping us preserve our vision. And by preserving our vision, as it turns out, the research is showing it also helps to preserve our brain function, our cognition.
Why don't we start by defining the term that I used in the intro, angiogenesis? And so, what is it, and what role does it play in overall brain health and vision?
Okay, angiogenesis. Angio is blood vessel. Genesis is how the body grows them. So angiogenesis is simply how our body grows and protects blood vessels. And what's really amazing is that we've got 60,000 miles worth of blood vessels packed into our adult bodies, under the skin, through all of our tissues, all the way down to the bone, and even inside the bone, we've got more circulation. And our blood vessels are the highways and byways that bring the oxygen that we breathe and the nutrients that we to feed every single organ, including our eyes and especially our brain. Okay, that's really the connection. So when we have healthy blood vessels, very good circulation, our vision is actually good. When we've got good circulation in our brain, our cognition is actually good. And guess what happens when we start to have problems with our vision? The most common causes of vision loss and cognitive loss is actually interference with the circulation of both our eyes and our brain. Not surprisingly, both are in our heads and our skull connected to each other. And so this, sort of like what feeds the brain feeds the eye. What ails the brain also can ail the eye as well. So let's, use that as kind of a jumping off point to thinking about what research is teaching us. The most common cause of vision loss over the age of 60 is diabetes. For people with diabetes, is diabetic blindness. All right, high blood sugars kind of marinate in your bloodstream all of the blood vessels. And when blood vessels are overly marinated with high blood sugar and all the consequences of what high blood sugar can do, including to your insulin and all the other hormones and metabolites in your body, you know what the blood vessels do? They actually start to shut down. And when the blood vessels shut down, it sparks new blood vessels to try to heal the shut down areas. And when that happens in the eye, it causes a big problem. And here's the reason why. Your eye, my eye, eyes, I should say plural, are crystal balls. Okay, think about them. They're a little bit smaller than a golf ball, and they're crystal clear. From the front of the eye, you get light. Wake up in the morning, you see the bright sunlight. That's light entering your eye, going through clear liquid. All right, it's like in a fish tank with an aquarium. The light goes right in, goes through a hole, the pupil, and then goes right to the back of the eye. And the back of the eye, which is connected to the brain, there is a carpet of nerves. The carpet of nerves is called the retina. You may have heard of the retina, but it's really literally a carpet of nerves that is made of neurons, okay, brain cells effectively, interlaced, woven, stitched together with a circulation, because the power it takes to process the definition that we want for our vision requires a lot of blood flow, a lot of oxygen. And so the nerves and blood vessels are laced together, okay, like a beautiful old-fashioned tablecloth. And when the light signals hit that nerve signal and it's powered by the blood supply, it allows that nerve signal to go straight into our brain. Okay, right to the back of our brain. And basically, that's how we actually see. Now, the circulation, when it has to grow to overcome damaged blood vessels from a disease like diabetes, or there's something called macular degeneration, most common cause of blindness, vision loss in people over the age of 60 without diabetes. So it's when blood vessels are unhealthy, and they do the same thing. They react to their unhealthy state by trying to grow more of themselves in order to maintain the blood flow that is actually not adequate. And when the blood vessels grow in the eye, listen, this is a crystal clear ball. When extra blood vessels have to grow to compensate for problems in circulation, that's where there's not a lot of room for growing new blood vessels. And so when those new blood vessels grow, they grow abnormally from diabetes or aging, they leak. Now, I told you there's fluid in the eye. It's crystal clear. But when blood vessels leak, they're leaking cloudy fluid or they're leaking blood. Now, immediately we put blood into this crystal clear aquarium. It's kind of like dumping, ink into your fish tank. What do you think is going to happen? You're not going to be able to see through that ink, right? And all of a sudden, you are losing vision. And so, the most common causes of vision loss in the world are due to abnormal blood vessels, unhealthy blood vessels, and that's why some of the real breakthroughs that have come through the work I and other people have done is to develop anti-angiogenic blood vessel taming. Think about the lion tamer in the circus. Down, boy, okay? Down blood vessels, back to normal, beat them back into shape, prevent that leaking. That is actually the biggest breakthrough in the treatment of vision loss to prevent diabetic blindness and blindness from aging, from macular degeneration. Okay, now to get those treatments done, Jim, you got to inject in the eye. You got to put a needle in the eye, which nobody volunteers for. It works really well. So the question is, how can you avoid getting there to begin with? As you were just saying, at your age, my age, we don't want to ever get that needle in the eye. What can we actually do to help protect it? And this is where diet comes in, because our nutrition can help us keep blood vessels healthy, and they can also help to tame those blood vessels that might think about acting up. And that's really where eating to beat vision loss is a reality today.
And before we get into some of these foods,
Mm,
our show is very, very, very tactical. And my promise to everybody is, we keep it, to a certain amount of time, but then also give people practical, pragmatic things that they could
yeah.
do that's simple and easy. I want to get clear then. So your eye, which has these also neurons, it's kind of like almost a part of your brain that's outside of your skull, and as the foods could potentially protect and maybe prevent or mitigate, like even they're neuroprotective, and we've done a lot of episodes on certain foods that are good for your brain, or
Mm-hmm.
neuronutrition. It could also be protective to your eye. Has your research shown that we could actually even not even just protect, but even reverse? Has that been seen?
Yeah, well, actually, by actually taming blood vessels remarkably for people who have lost vision, we can actually, in some cases, reverse vision loss and restore lost vision. I have a patient, and this is about 10 years ago when these breakthrough treatments, these are the injections, came out. Before that, there were no treatments. Okay. I had a patient who was in her 80s. Her favorite thing was playing golf. It requires good vision to hit that ball and good coordination. And she was so bummed when she had macular degeneration. She couldn't see the golf ball. I got her on treatment, and in about 2 months, I got a call from her out of the blue. And she's like, "Guess where I'm calling you from, Dr. Lee? I'm calling you from the golf course, and I am playing my game and really scoring and doing really well at it again. You took me from not being able to see the ball to being able to see again." And in fact, I'm like, "How did you get there?" Her name was Gloria. And she said, because I knew she couldn't drive because of the vision loss. She was like, "Guess what? I drove myself as well. I got my license back because I could see again." So this is dramatic stuff when you actually tame and keep blood vessels healthy. And by the way, the same foods and approaches that actually maintain vascular health. This is what we're talking about. Blood vessels that you wouldn't normally look at. Like when you look in the mirror when you've had a late night out, okay, and you see your eyes are bloodshot, it's an example of how many blood vessels in your eye. The ones that count for vision you can't see in the mirror. They're behind the eye. When you go to the eye doctor and they dilate your pupils and they put your chin on and they look deep, they're really looking at part of your brain. They're looking at that tapestry, the neurons that are there interlaced with blood vessels. We can see it all. Now, so the key thing is that the foods that actually can be used to protect that carpet of neurons interlaced with blood vessels, keeping those blood vessels healthy, taming those abnormal blood vessels, also turn out to be protective for the brain as well. And so here is sort of a twofer, right? You were talking about like the eye and the brain being outside of the skull. Here's a better way to think about it. The brain, like your skull, is really a two-level house. Okay. The brain is on the upstairs on the second floor, and underneath the brain, underneath the floor, which is the bottom part of the skull housing your brain, on the first floor are your eyes. So the part of your brain that's on the first floor are your eyes. And then you go walk upstairs, and now the brain's right there. And so this connection, just like in your house, of the circuitry and the circulation between your eyes and your brain suddenly makes sense. And what we eat can be good for the brain, good for the nerves, and what's good for the brain, the blood vessels and the nerves in the brain, also good for blood vessels and nerves in the eye. So this is a perfect topic for
Nice.
your audience. It's really, really interconnected and very practical too.
I love that.